Welcome to my talk for the Elizabeth I of England and Mary Stuart tour. I am so sorry I could not join you at Hever Castle, but I hope you will enjoy this online talk. Thank you so much for watching. Hello, I'm Dr. Estelle Paranque and I'm an author, a historian, a broadcaster, an assistant professor and a YouTuber. And I'm specialized in queenship. I really love looking at female leadership. I have very much a soft spot for strong female leaders. I have published extensively on Elizabeth I, Catherine de Medici, the French royal family, and I have a few, obviously by looking at the French family, looking at Elizabeth I's reign, I've obviously looked at Mary, Queen of Scots. And this talk is really focusing on Mary, Queen of Scots, Mary Stuart, but to reveal to you that for me, she's actually une Guise. What I mean by that is that she was so close to her Guise family that I would like to explore with you the different Guise figures that really influence Mary, Queen of Scots' fate, reign, personality. I think you really cannot understand Mary, Queen of Scots without understanding her whole Guise French family. Mary Stuart was born on the 8th December 1542 in Scotland. She's the daughter of James V of Scotland and of Marie of Guise. Now let's talk about who was Marie de Guise, because I think here, without understanding the mother, you can't really understand the daughter. And though they only spent 5.5 years together, you know, in the same country together, they did exchange letters when Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, was sent to France. Marie de Guise was also called Marie of Lorraine. Lorraine is a very important duchy in France. It's a symbol of power, of strength. The Guise family are princes of blood. It means that they have royal blood and they have a claim to the throne. And all of this is very important on how then you can understand the family as a whole. They are a power-hungry family. I'm not saying that in a bad term, in a bad way, because I believe that any noble families were, power hungry, but I'm just saying that for you to understand all the decisions they're gonna make is influenced by the fact that they really do want power. She was Queen Consort of Scotland from 1538 until 1542, when her daughter became Queen of Scotland as a baby, as an infant. She became then Queen Regent. She is a very powerful woman. She was Regent of Scotland on behalf of her daughter from 1554 until her death in 1560. She's the eldest of 12 children born to Claude, Duke of Guise, and Antoinette of Bourbon. She was previously married before being married to James V of Scotland, to Louis II d'Orléans, Duke of Longueville. The marriage was arranged by Francis I of France himself, but proved being short-lived because the Duke of Longueville died in 1537, so just after 3 years. And it created a very traumatic event for Marie de Guise. In 1535, she had given birth to a son, Francis III, the Duke of Longueville. And when she was forced to marry, because she was forced to marry James V of Scotland, it was a diplomatic alliance, it was a diplomatic marriage. It was something that really the Guises family wanted, and obviously that France wanted. She was forced to leave her son behind, and she never saw him again. He died in 1551. And here I want you to understand this, because I want you to understand that the life of Mary de Guise is really not an easy one. And so when she gave birth to Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, in 1542, her love and bond with her second child is going to be so strong. She's going to want the best for her daughter. And the best is obviously making sure that she is a powerful woman, that she's really well educated. But it also means that making decisions that would be another sacrifice for her in many ways, because it would mean to be again separated from her. And that's why when Mary Stuart was 5.5 years old, she is sent to France. Marie Stuart is going to become Dauphine de France. Marriage is arranged between Francis II, well, he's going to become the Francis II, but he's a Dauphin of France, he's the eldest son of Henry II of France and Catherine de Medici. And eventually we know that it means she's on the path of becoming Queen Consort of France. For the Guises, having one of them being on the French throne is a massive achievement. It also means that there is, once she's going to have a son with Francis II, it's their blood again on the throne. So really reinforcing here the idea that the Guises are royal blood and royal family. And I think here it's quite important to remember this, because this is a driving force behind the Guises and their interest in, getting more power, getting more authority, getting more political and diplomatic influence. But it's not going to stop there, because obviously the life of Mary Queen of Scots is so complicated, it's so complex. I mean, nothing is going to go as planned, or she's going to become queen. Yes, of course she is, in 1559 at the death of Henry II of France. But her husband, Francis II, is going to die on the 5th December 1560. So just 3 days before her own birthday. It must have been also very dramatic and traumatic. And when you think about it, do I think that Mary Stuart was in love with Francis II? I think there was definitely a connection. There was an attachment. I think they got on well together. But I think here it's very hard to talk about a real love relationship. First of all, because they were young. I think Francis II was really in love with Mary. I think the dynamic is more Mary being in control. And even more so, we see that her uncles, the Guises, are taking over. They are in the Privy Council. They are getting a lot of influence over Francis II. So here, from 1559, for these 18 months, from July 1559 to December 1560, we can even call it the rise of the Guises at court, because they become so visible, they become so influential. And so the other noble families in France are starting to be a bit worried, especially the Bourbons, and who are Protestants or very interested in reformed ideas and linked to Navarre. So here we already have how the setup for the religious civil wars in France is really entrenched into the politics of 1559, 1560. And obviously, I'm a bit simplifying things here, but I want you to remember the importance of having the Guises as privy councillors, advisors, and how much, in many ways, they control the couple. Having said that, they do control the couple, including Mary Stuart, but Mary Stuart is far from being a puppet queen. I think when you look at the life of Mary Stuart, we have this idea that she's a victim or a puppet queen, she's easily influenced, when actually there is much more to Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots. The more she's going to grow and become her own free woman, her own adult with her own thoughts, the more we're going to see her agency, her influence, her power shining through. But she's going to do it in a very different ways, and probably mostly because she's going to make her own decisions. Some of them are not. She's going to think that is the right decision at the time. She really thinking about it's a game of chess, and she's thinking about all her pawns and how she can advance them. At the same time, obviously, it's going to create problems. When her husband, Francis II, died in 1560, it doesn't mean it's the end for Mary Stuart in terms of when I said there's the rise of the Guises at court. The Guises have established themselves. They're extremely powerful, extremely influential. But for Mary Stuart, The rise continues in my head until 1565. I'm going to explain this. She's forced to go back to Scotland. It is mostly because Catherine de' Medici does not want her in France. And we can understand why. Catherine de' Medici is someone who's always been in the shadows of other women. Diane de Poitiers, and others, that have been at court, like the mistresses of Francis I. And so she's someone who wants to be in the spotlight in the 1560s. She's had enough. She knows that if Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, is staying in France, she will remain in her shadows. Mary is pretty, Mary is intelligent, Mary is influential, she comes from the right family. So all of this means that for Catherine de' Medici, this is something that needs to be rectified, and Mary needs to go back to Scotland. At that point, Mary wants to go through England, and she asked for safe conduct, and Elizabeth refused it. She refused it mostly because she doesn't really want to receive Mary at her court, especially because there were a lot of tensions with Mary still calling herself Queen of England, the rightful Queen of England, and using the English coat of arms. So Elizabeth is not ready in 1561 to receive her cousin at court. So she's going to go by the sea, she's going to go back to Scotland. And here we see how Mary is very intelligent and politically astute. There is a reformation happening in Scotland. She's going to let it happen, but she's going to negotiate for her to be able to still practice Catholicism and going to Mass in private. And that's going to be granted. So here we don't have this ultra-Catholic trying to impose Catholicism back in Scotland. We have someone who knows how to make compromises. And probably something where she doesn't really listen to her Guise family, who are ultra-Catholics and are only going to push for more wars and more conflict until Catholicism, has eradicated Protestantism. So we have someone here, as I said, more politically astute. Then obviously there's question of a second marriage. She's going to be, there's going to be negotiation with Don Carlos, Philip II's son, and where Elizabeth and Catherine are going to join together. It's in my book, Blood, Fire and Gold. They join together to prevent that match. They really don't want Mary Stuart to be married to a Spanish prince. The Guises are not pushing this forward too much. They are interested, but they are very... I don't think they did everything they could to make it happen. So on that front, it went okay. The first mistake that I think Mary Stuart is really going to make, and probably not listen to her Guise family, is when she decides to marry Henry Darnley, with whom she's related through her father's side, giving her a stronger claim to the English throne. As where you see that Mary Stuart was, the Scottish throne was not enough. She had been Queen of France. That throne was gone now. And that's going to be a problem for the Guises. So the Guises are going to want to fight that corner. But for her now, it's really about the English throne. She really doesn't recognize Elizabeth as the rightful Queen of England. And it's not to blame her, because for lots of Catholics, obviously the marriage between Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII is null and void. So, here there's no a big surprise, the fact that Mary, Queen of Scots, doesn't really recognize Elizabeth's legitimacy. Mary, Queen of Scots, is going to make the decision to marry Henry Darnley. And I think from then, it's when her rise stops. Because she doesn't realize that he's absolutely awful, an awful man, probably psychotic. I mean, honestly, bursts of bad temper, violent, probably massively toxic narcissist. All of this that he kind of tried to really conceal until he was, in charge. He really believed that he was going to become the political master of Mary, Queen of Scots. And I have to say, no one can be Mary Stuart's political master. And I think it's because Mary Stuart is often underestimated, and her intelligence is often underestimated. She's going to have a son with him, who's going to be James VI of Scotland, James I of England. But then everything is going to go downhill. Something awful is going to happen. he's going to be, he's going to kill her secretary Riggio, and I think it's because of jealousy, where he thinks they're spending too much time together. He thinks that there might be like a romance, an affair. I don't think there was, but I don't think Mary Stuart would have been that stupid. And it's me saying this, it says a lot. But I think here we really have the fact that Henry Darnley just shows his true colours. He's very erratic. And obviously it's going to create like faction in Scotland, where people are going to say, well, we can't have him. And there's going to be Bothwell, who's also absolutely dreadful, going to take that opportunity. I think he's responsible for the death of Henry Darnley. But worse than that, after that, Mary is going to marry him. But I don't think she has a choice here. I don't think she makes a choice. I think she's, we know that Bothwell kidnapped her. And so I believe that he raped her. I believe that he tortured her. On some levels, and I believe that she had very little choice if she wanted to keep her sanity and maybe even to protect her son, because I think we forget that she still had an infant to protect from that man. So she was probably trying to please him to ensure and to save the life of her son. But that's obviously politically a huge mistake, and we have here downfall that starts from that point, because then she's gonna decide to flee from Scotland in 1568. She's gonna go to England, and then it's her captive years where we see how Mary and the Guises are in touch to try to get basically 3 thrones back. The English one being more complex, but they want the Scottish throne back, they want the French throne, and they want eventually the English throne. And here I think it's where we need to remember, and when we look at Mary Stuart, when we look at what she did, when we look at her life, at her reign, at her political decisions, we need to look at her correspondence with the Guises, with her. So now it's no longer her uncles, but it's her cousins. They're extremely powerful. They're extremely ultra-Catholic. They are determined, but they're also extremely loved and supported in France. We almost have this type of very strong, relationship between Mary and her cousins. And during all her time in prison in England, she will be very much in touch with them. She will use spies. She will use the network they have. And here's a very important and impressive Guise network. But now you might ask, who were these men really? Who were these Guises? Who were these cousins that were constantly in touch with her, trying to help her, trying to make sure she was freed? Because they really did everything they could to make sure that Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, was freed. She was a Guise. First and foremost, the fact that she was a prisoner in England meant they were, in a way, prisoners themselves. The first one is Henry I, Prince of Joinville, Duke of Guise, Comte of Eu. He was born in 1550 and he died in 1588. He's sometimes called Le Balafré, Scarface, because he was injured in battle, and so he had this big scar. He's a key figure in the French Wars of Religion. He's a powerful opponent of Catherine of Medici, and of Henry III. Henry took an active military role in the Second and Third Wars of the French Religious War, fighting at the Battle of Saint-Denis in 1567, the Battle of Jarnac in 1569, and successfully defending Poitiers during a siege by Admiral Coligny, a very strong Huguenot leader. He was wounded on the face, as I said, that's why it's called Scarface, at the Battle of Montancourt. The more we went through the religious civil wars, he was praised, he was loved by the people, he was extremely influential, and his influence kept growing. He was involved in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572. I really believe actually the Guises were behind all of it, and the blame was put on the French royal family when really it should have been put on the Guises. In 1576 he formed the Catholic League with his brothers, and his relationship with King Henry III were deteriorating. At the death of Francis, Duke of Anjou in 1584, he became one of the leaders of the Catholic League, completely the kind of the symbol of resistance against the Protestants and against Henri de Navarre, who was going to become the heir to the throne. And it was something absolutely unacceptable for Henri de Guise. During that time, though, the Guises were extremely kind of, put into the religious civil wars. They were still trying to help their cousin, Mary Stuart, Mary, Queen of Scots. As I said, Henry had 2 brothers, but one of them was really important as well. He was extremely decisive in terms of what he was doing. The other one just took a kind of a backseat. So Charles de Lorraine, Duc de Mayenne, was born in 1554 and died in 1611, was a French noble, governor, military commander, and a very important figure in the French religious civil wars. He took part in the wars. He was with his brother Henry during, the siege of Poitiers. He fought alongside him. And you have really these 2 men, really being almost a powerful kind of duo. He had radical Catholic ideas. There would be no compromise when it comes to religion in France. These men were extremely influential, as I said, but they saw themselves as princes of blood. They wanted the French throne. And as I said, I think the end game for the Guises were to deliver Mary Queen of Scots, to put her back on the Scottish throne, to put her on the English throne, and for the Guises, with the help of Spain, Philip II, to take the French throne. And then it would have been a complete overthrow of all these other dynasties. The Guises wanted to be their own dynasty. And I think that when we look at Mary Stuart, if we completely forget what's happening in France, what the Guises were doing, you completely forget, you forget half of her life. You forget half of who she was, even maybe more. In my eyes, Mary Queen of Scots was really, truly a Guise first and foremost. And I believe that if you only look at the Scottish side or English side, the sources, you're missing such a huge important part of her life. I think it's also important to remember that most of her letters are in French, that, there is so much to discuss about what she wrote during captivity, because it shows not only her agency, but it also shows her allegiance to the Guise faction. She was a true Guise. She was her mother's daughter. I hope that by giving you that kind of glimpses into the lives of her French family, you will now understand Mary Stuart and Mary Queen of Scots a bit in a different light. Do not forget that she was also French, and that part of France played a huge part in her upbringing, her mentality, and even her idea of power. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm so glad that you did. And yes, it was my entire pleasure to discuss Mary Stuart and the Guise and their loyalty for each other. Bye!